Hey, my name is Milan, and in this video I'll show you how easy it is to start building generative AI applications using GitHub Models. I'll explain what GitHub Models are, how you can integrate them into your .NET applications, and start building some cool AI-driven features. If you've never heard of GitHub Models, it's a collection of AI models that's made available through GitHub. You can see some of the most popular models here, or you can even explore the full model catalog, which contains quite a bit of models that you can start using to build some AI-powered features. I'm going to show you how you can integrate this with your .NET application using Aspire and MEAI on the client side. So let's jump into the code and see how we can start using this. I've got a simple Aspire application running the latest version of .NET Aspire and just one project, my API, and it has a reference to this external service that's pointing to just my blog. And what I'm going to do is expose an API endpoint, which is going to query the respective page on my blog, extract the contents of this blog, and then it's going to use AI to summarize this blog post into a category. And that's what we're going to return as the API response. So the idea is quite simple, but it's going to take some work to get this functional. Now we have to start from the AppHost. So what we can do is install a NuGet package that's going to allow us to integrate with GitHub Models. This package is currently still in preview, but if you look for GitHub Models, you'll see the latest version here called Aspire Hosting GitHub Models. So let me go ahead and install it. And now this exposes a new resource that you can add to your app host. So I'm going to say var AI model, and I'm going to say builder add GitHub model. We have to give our resource a name. I'm just going to call it AI model. And then you have to specify which model you want to use. You can either type out the name, or there's this class called GitHub model. And let's say we want to use an OpenAI model. And I want to use, for example, 4.0 mini for this demo. And then what you do is you add a reference to the AI model inside of your .NET application. And this is just going to set up the connection. Now, what we have to do next is to integrate a client application that's going to connect to this AI model. And then we can just use a simple IChatClient from MEAI to interact with this AI. But before we get into that, let's start the application, and I want to show you one missing piece when it comes to integrating with GitHub Models. So here's the Aspire dashboard. And you can see that our GitHub Models resource is kind of stuck because there's an unresolved parameter. This is a cool feature of Aspire, which notifies you that you're missing some configuration value that's required for everything to work properly. And in this case, it's a parameter. We're missing a personal access token, or the API key, for accessing the GitHub API. Now, I'll show you how you can get this value in a moment, but how we enter it is either through the Aspire dashboard, where we can say enter values. And here is the value that we have to specify, and we can paste it here. And we also have an option to save this to user secrets. Now, let's say I save this. We're going to get some gibberish in there. An alternative is you copy this value and you go into your user secrets for the app host, which is what I'm going to do. I'll right click my app host project, and then I'll say manage user secrets. And here I want to specify a value using parameters, then the name of my setting, which is going to be AI model GitHub API key. So here I have to specify the actual value. And because this is my user secrets, this won't be part of source control. So let's go into the GitHub UI, and I'll show you how you can get a personal access token. You have to authenticate with GitHub, go into settings, and then if you scroll down, you should see the developer settings section here. Go into personal access tokens and then fine-grained tokens. I have a couple of here that are expired, so let's generate a new one, and I'm going to give it a name. Let's say GitHub Models API key. This is just for your own reference. I'll set the expiration time to 7 days, for example. I'll give it access to just the public repositories. And then what's important is you have to click add permissions and look for models and make sure you check that. And this gives you read-only access to GitHub Models, which is what's required to be able to use this. So you get a confirm model, and I'll say confirm. And here is my access token. So I'm going to store this in my user secrets. Let's go into Visual Studio, and I'm going to paste it here and watch what happens when we start the application now. You can see that now all of our resources are healthy, they're up and running, and we can start using our AI model that we configured through the app host. The next thing we need to do is to integrate a client library for interacting with our GitHub AI model. So I'll look for another Git package. I'm going to check include pre-release, and I want to look for Aspire Azure AI Inference. So let's install the latest version of this library. And then inside of my program file for my .NET project, I can go ahead and say builder, add Azure Chat Completion Service, add Azure Chat Completions Client. I have to specify the connection name, which is the name of my resource, AI model, and I'm also going to call add chat client so that I can resolve this as an IChatClient in some service where I want to call my AI model using the IChatClient abstraction from MEAI. Here's what the flow is going to look like. I have this API endpoint where we can pass in a slug. And this is how we're going to define which article from my blog we're going to read. The blog service is actually a typed client, which is configured to point to my website. And it's going to send a simple GET request, ensure that we get back successful response, read the HTML content, and then it's going to extract the content of the actual article. Now, I'm implementing this using a helper library. Let me show you which one. It's called HTML Agility Pack, and it contains a bunch of utilities that make it easy to work with an HTML document. So I just instantiate a document, load the actual HTML content, which I already have, and then I can work with the contents of my article. And once I return this, we just have the raw article content without any navigation elements, without any ads for my courses and whatnot. And then we pass this along to the blog summarizer, which isn't implemented, but this is where we want to interact with our AI model. So how do we do this? Well, we can just inject an IChatClient. This is an abstraction from Microsoft Extensions AI, and you can think of it as this simple abstraction that allows you to call an LLM. So the API revolves around sending a chat message where you can actually input your prompt and you get back a chat response. From the response, you try to extract what the AI model was able to figure out based on your request. So here's how I'm going to implement this. I'm going to drop in a prompt. It's going to say, you are a blog content assistant. Summarize the following blog post as one of the following categories: technology, business, programming, architecture, DevOps, cloud security, or general. Now, only these 8 values are allowed. Be as concise as possible. I want a one-word response with one of these options, and again, all of those options listed. The blog content is, and then I specify the actual blog content. So we have a simple prompt that we can send to our AI model, and then I'll get the response by saying await chat client get response async, and I'm just going to pass in my prompt. If the response does not contain any messages, let's say we return just some default value, and let's say that the default response is just returning general. If we do get some message in the response, I'm going to drop in a switch expression that's just going to try to find the respective category from the response message. And then once we have this category, we can return it from this method, and this should complete our flow, hopefully, if everything works. Now let's try this out. I'll place a breakpoint here. I'll place a breakpoint in my API endpoint, and then let's send a request here. I'll use curl to send a GET request to HTTPS localhost 5001. The URI is blog, and then I have to specify the slug, and I'll drop in this value for my blog post about vertical slice architecture. So let me hit enter, and we immediately land on this breakpoint inside of our minimal API endpoint. So I'm going to fetch this blog post. You can see we get the HTML content, and this contains the entire page that's loaded on this URL. So then we're going to extract the content. Let me actually step into this to show you what this looks like. Now, essentially, I'm selecting the article node and removing some sponsored content and anything else that's not really relevant for the actual article, so that in the end we are left with just the raw article content. And then we can pass this along to our blog summarizer, which is going to send our prompt to the AI model that we have configured. We'll get a response back from the AI, and you can see the message is just one word saying architecture. So this is the category that the AI determined is the appropriate one for our blog content. So then we're going to return this as the category, and we're going to return this from our API. So I'm going to hit continue. We'll get a response back in curl, and you can see the category is set to architecture. Now I want to show you the distributed trace for this request. If we go into traces and then look at the latest trace here, we can see the HTTP request sent to our API. Then we have an outgoing request to my blog post, here's the actual URL where we sent the entire request. So if you go here, you'll actually see the entire blog post. And then we have this span here, which is quite interesting, and it represents our request sent to the AI model. So you can see this is a chat request to OpenAI GPT-4o Mini. Now, what's also new in .NET Aspire is you can view the prompt that was sent to the LLM. It contains a bunch of details that are relevant. It also shows you the duration for how long it took to get a response and how much tokens you burned to execute this entire request. I assume this includes both the input and output tokens. Also, what's new in Aspire is you can now see your structured logs inside of your distributed traces. So a lot of improvements going on here, but I want us to see if we can improve this design. I want to see if we can make this response strongly typed by having an enum to represent our category. And then we want to use the generic variant of getResponse async, where we can specify the category. And now the response should just contain the category value. So we can try accessing the response result, and if for some reason it's invalid, we can return category general. Now I will have to update my method to return a category, and then let's comment out the old code. I'm just going to leave it in because it works, and let's test out our new solution and see if it's better. I'll send the same request as before, and I'll press continue here because we only care about the prompt and the response that we get back from the LLM. Now, if you try to send this request, we're actually going to get an exception because strongly typed responses aren't supported for this version of the model. But how you can fix this is trying out some other model. So let's say I use a model from XAI. I'm going to use Grok 3 Mini and retry this request. So let's send it again, and I'll press continue here. And let's try to send this using our chat client. And you can see that after a few moments, we are hopefully going to get back a response. And we do get back a response, and it contains an object that says data and then architecture. So it's a JSON object that we can map to our enum. You can see that the MEAI library is able to figure out this mapping. So we are going to return the correct value here. The category is architecture, and if I press continue, we'll get the numeric value of this enum back in our response. So this is how easy it is to start building AI-powered applications in .NET using MEAI and GitHub Models. You can even get strongly typed responses, and if you have a proper subscription, you can even use some more powerful models. I'm just using what's currently available for free. Let me know in the comments what you think about using AI inside of your .NET applications, and if you found a practical use case on the projects that you are working on. If you want to learn more about using MEAI, go ahead and watch this video next. Smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, stay awesome.